Good morning, everyone. Unexpected. I know that this is in your feed on a Friday morning, unprecedented here for Into the Outer Realms, but necessity is the mother of invention. So, here on the brink of the weekend, I wanted to come on and finish last night's show. So, this was about the year 1947 and the really odd parallels between all of the UFO sightings. It was much more than Maury Island, much more than Roswell, much more than Kenneth Arnold and Mount Rainier, and 6 to 9 saucers being seen at military bases in Arizona. All the way out in Maine, they saw 6 of these things. There was an astronomer who saw 10 of them through his telescope. So, to me, this is very compelling in the idea of what happened after. And that's what I'm going to talk about today because I didn't have a chance. So, the last 3 weeks, I'm wearing my Skogamore, We Are the Outlawed t-shirt today. I hope that's not the case. I've been shadow banned certain places for some of the things we've talked about here and on Sinister Mysteries. So be it, no big deal. Want to get the information out there regardless. But the past 3 Thursday nights, twice prior to the show, and last night, 49 minutes into the show, just hard out on the internet and for my neighbors as well. And it's only happening on Thursday nights. Very, very odd because that's when the show is. Which is somewhat controversial, the show. So anyway, I'm gonna pick up. I'm just gonna backtrack just a little to where we were cut off, where I was cut off, and I was talking about that on July 31st. So after all the Roswell stuff, and you can see part one on this page, Into the Outer Realms, LinkedIn, and also YouTube on the Everyday is a Story channel. So July 31st, after all of this that's going on with Roswell, and yeah, they put out the press release, but then no, and it's just a weather balloon and all of this kind of nonsense, really nonsense. When you look at all the material I presented last night, and so many other researchers have over the years, this is clear that this was not a weather balloon. So in the aftermath of all of this, Kenneth Arnold, who had seen in June a couple weeks prior to Roswell, not even a couple of weeks, had seen the 9 flying discs. Actually, they were wing shaped flying wings, not full saucers. He's prompted by Ray Palmer, who is the publisher of Amazing Stories. He had a connection with Fred Chrisman, who was involved with Harold Dahl at the Maury Island incident, which is also in very close proximity there, where these 6 discs came down, killed the guy's dog on his boat in Puget Sound, burned his son's arm, did damage to his boat. Fred Chrisman, controversial, possibly involved in the JFK assassination, at least according to District Attorney Jim Garrison. Anyway, at the prompting of Ray Palmer, who Fred Chrisman had told, hey, I fought these things in a cave in Burma that sound a lot like what Richard Shaver was talking about, and the Shaver mysteries were a huge part of Amazing Stories. They gather together in a hotel. So it's Kenneth Arnold. This is in Tacoma, Washington on July 31st. Emil Smith is there, who was the United Airlines pilot who saw, he and 2 other in the cockpit of his airplane, saw on their way from Boise to Seattle a UFO. And there were 2 U.S. Army, Air Force. Keep in mind that the Air Force did not exist, but it's soon to come. Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William L. Davidson, 2 career officers, commissioned officers, serious people, are called together with Dahl and Chrisman to go over the Maury Island incident. Like I said last night, Maury Island is often dismissed among ufologists as a hoax, because Dahl and Chrisman freak out. You have a captain and a lieutenant here from the Army Air Force. You have Kenneth Arnold, who's sort of a minor celebrity now, and these guys are asking very pointed questions. Now, Chrisman brought the evidence that he supposedly gathered the next day from Puget Sound when he saw a saucer himself. Maybe that saucer was coming back to try to recover that material. Anyway, Dahl and Chrisman freak out. Dahl had been visited a couple of days after the incident that killed his dog and wounded his son by a man in black in a brand new Buick, who said, if you talked about this to anyone, there will be serious consequences. So they freak out and they sign paper saying this is all a hoax. Yet they give allegedly Brown and Davidson evidence. Plus, Brown and Davidson have all these notes. So they leave from Tacoma the next day to go back to the Army airfield in California where they're stationed, and their B 25 bomber crashes. That was the moment that the broadcast went out yesterday because there are three alleged phone links from that Army airfield, which was their home base, that said this was done on purpose. The plane was crashed on purpose to cover up the evidence. And this was the final episode of Project Blue Book with Ian Gillum, with Laura Menzel, and other people on the History Channel. And that never came back. It was planned to, and then it didn't. So in September, aviation specialist Rickett. Now, this is where it gets a little problematic that this is a part two follow up by necessity, because I talked about Rickett. Rickett was boots on the ground at Mac Brazel's farm, looking at the debris and looking at the crash site. This guy was a longtime aviation specialist. He had gone to Germany to with James Forrestal and with JFK to be an aviation specialist, specifically on high-tech German aviation questions in the aftermath of World War II. Where do I have this here? Rickett, he takes a Manhattan Project scientist, a man named Lincoln LaPaz, to the Roswell crash site to determine the speed, the trajectory, all of that high-tech stuff that a specialist would be able to tell about an object that impacted north of town. Now, LaPaz was part of a special UFO commission during the active time of the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer and the bomb, and all of that. And then through the 1954 Atomic Energy Act, all of this stuff was made very secret. So we're lucky now that this kind of came out. But they discover a possible touchdown point about 5 miles northwest of the debris field. So this thing hit and then, splattered. They found material. They found sand crystallized or vitrified, which is exposure to very, very high heat, usually at a nuclear radiation kind of level. They spend 3 weeks studying the area and interviewing witnesses. Now, interviewing witnesses was difficult because remember that a Secret Service agent on behalf of President Truman swore all these people to secrecy. Edgar Mitchell, the famed astronaut who started the Noetic Science Institute, because he was so blown away about what he experienced in space. Edgar Mitchell actually grew up in Roswell, and he said people were very, very afraid to talk about it because they had been threatened. So here we go. Now we're in the aftermath. We were so close to having a complete show last night. It's frustrating. But on September 18th, the CIA is created. On September 19th, the Secretary of Defense, a cabinet level position, is created. And James Forrestal, who is already read into all of this UFO stuff because of what he saw in Germany and what else he knew, he becomes Secretary of Defense. And remember, a couple years later, he is suicided out of a window at the Bethesda Naval Hospital because he wanted to go public with UFO information. Of course, that wasn't allowed to happen. Now, on September 24th, also involving Forrestal, and this memo is available through the Truman Library. Truman creates Majestic 12, Madge 12, the Wise Men. It goes by all kinds of names. It's an interesting story. Go to the archives of this show. I did a whole entire show on Ike and JFK versus MJ 12. Forrestal is on that commission. Twining is on that commission. Vanderberg. Again, last night I talked about Twining and Vanderberg. They were both guys heavily involved with the Roswell cover-up. Again, read into the truth about UFOs and the reality that they were coming here in the summer of 1947, these high-tech saucers. As a matter of fact, 2 days after Majestic 12 is created with all of these guys, Twining writes a report regarding high-tech saucers recovered in New Mexico. They have domes on them, and they fly in groups from 3 to 9. That matches Maury Island. That matches an incident from the summer in Maine. It matches an incident over Edwards Air Force Base, or what would become Edwards Air Force space in the future. September 26th, the same day that Twining files this report, Project Sign is created. Project Sign goes beyond Project Grudge. You may not have heard about that. Project Blue Book, you almost certainly have. So there were three different iterations. As my colleague Craig Ansel and I talk about on Sinister Mysteries, I talk about on these parallel patterns and pathways with the private contractors. To change the name every so often is a really good way with these government programs and with the government contractors tend to buy each other or go through name changes because then a trail goes cold. So if you're a Freedom of Information Act researcher and you want this information, you now have to list all these iterations of names instead of just one name. You can't just say, give me everything you have on Project Sign, because that's only one that they're going to give you. They're not going to give you Grudge. They're not going to give you. So it's more to keep track of. It makes it harder. It's very clever. Good work if you could get it. In October, Brigadier General George Shulgin, who was involved with a lot of this UFO stuff over the summer, as I said last night, he's the chief of the Air Intelligence Requirements Division. He writes a memo that includes this quote: requirements in the field of flying saucer type craft. So I mentioned last night, let me see if I can find it here really fast. I cannot. There was a it's worth finding if you just give me a second here. The names of some of these organizations that they created are really, really something. They really key that they believe that these were off-world. I'm not finding it. You can go back and see it on last night's show for sure. Anyway, he writes this. Twining then writes to Shulgin a memo saying the phenomena were real, not visionary or fictitious. So here's Twining, who's a very, very big deal in the Army Air Force, what will soon become the Air Force. On September 26th, the United States Air Force is created. And just a couple days later, they're writing these memos back and forth saying this is real, which is why they did this, why they created the CIA, why Hoover wrote the note that I quoted last night that said, listen, you kept the saucer from LA. You cannot cut us out. We want in on this. We want access. A very strange thing for a serious dude like Hoover to say if there wasn't anything to it. You know, J. Edgar wanted to be in on this. He wanted to be a read-in guy, and he was being pushed out. Eventually, Ike was pushed out. Eventually, JFK was pushed out. Forrestal was pushed out a window. More and more compartmentalization, and that's really what we're seeing with Tim Burchett from Tennessee, who we're seeing from Councilwoman Luna, the fact that they can't get access sitting on an intelligence committee in Congress. They cannot get access to information from the private contractors. Why now? For so many years, the DoD failed their annual audits and have billions of dollars that they can't account for. Where is the money going? The contractors don't have to say if they got it. So interesting little point here to finish up. On December 23rd of 1947, after this crazy year, the summer of the flying saucer, U.S. physicists John Bardeen and Walter Brattain did they? The transistor, working under William Shockley at Bell Labs. Bell Labs, a well-known government contractor working on this high-level stuff. They share the 1956 Nobel Prize in Physics. But did they indeed invent the transistor, or was this reverse engineered material recovered from these saucers, as people like Bob Lazar and many other people have said? Interesting little footnote here. I opened last night in February. The fleet came back, Operation High Jump, under Admiral Byrd after Byrd swore an encounter with UFOs that they were lucky to get out alive. They were completely unmatched, mismatched with these UFOs. You remember that there were rumors of Nazi bases and whatever, Antarctica and so forth. 4748 Operation Windmill, which was a smaller operation to Antarctica than High Jump, but they actually go back after all this going on. So all of this is created. That's what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to finish up the episode because next week, Craig and I continue from Waco, Ruby Ridge, Ted Kaczynski, Oklahoma City bombing. We now go to the Bundy standoffs, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to do the Las Vegas shooting. We have other good stuff coming up. Project 2025. I'm going to be back in 2 weeks doing my Supernatural 66 presentation. I have a nice slideshow that I'll put on here for you. That's been very popular on radio. I presented it at the Tulsa Road Fest in June. It was very, very well received, standing room only. A couple weeks after that, I'm going to do the importance of ritual and the dangers of spectacle, which is an excerpt from my storytelling book. Every day is a story all its own. So that's all I want to tell you. Lots to look forward to. We got through this clean. Hopefully, people will go and watch it after the fact and find out the culmination of all of that. Hi, Maggie. We need an episode about these episodes. Yeah, Doug, crazy times. I know. It's just a strange thing to write to my neighbors and go, yeah, is your internet down? And you're like, yeah, the download speeds, or we were hard out. We were just hard out, and it only lasts for about 10 minutes. Just enough to screw with things. Like I said, the prior to Thursdays, it was just prior to the show. So last week I rebooted the whole system. My neighbor rebooted his system. And we got through the show clean. And last night I neglected to do that. And there you go, 48 minutes into the show, for about 12 minutes, it was down, could not reboot the system. And then it just came up on its own. So there you go. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until they actually prevent me from doing it. And that's just the way it's going to be. So it was good to see those of you who checked in on Friday. For those of you who are watching this afterwards, and those of you who are listening to it on Nerd Radio in 3 weeks, Wednesday night, 10 p.m. EST, I will merge the two together, so you will just get the one episode. I will try to make it as clean as possible, but you will know what was going on because I'm talking about it here. So everybody, be well, enjoy the rest of your Friday, have a super weekend, and we'll see you. As we say, we're working on something really cool for around the 50th episode of Sinister Mysteries, maybe sooner. Stay mysterious, but don't be sinister. So I'll give you that advice, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.